Joining us today is college baseball coach, Coach Mike Deegan. Coach, thank you so much for taking time to join us. We're really looking forward to your thoughts on youth sports.
My name is Mike Deegan. As Andy said, I'm the head baseball coach at Denison University, but along with my wife, Lowry, and I, we're also members of the Granville community. We have 4 kids from the ages 11 all the way down to 4 that participate in the GRD. We're thankful to be part of the community. So when Andy asked me to talk today, I just started thinking about, what do I want to share? What could I really deliver today? And what I started thinking about for me as a college coach, and I thought I would share with you, is one of the neatest things on my job is I get to watch and observe families between the parents and the kids of college-age athletes and see the kids that have really developed really high social and emotional intelligence, and you can just kind of tell when those kids are ready to thrive. And I've always got a kick out of just sitting back and watching and just observing that process. And so the thing that I noticed, and I thought I would share today, is the one common denominator with all those kids, that their parents at some point had released the experience to the kids. Meaning, it was the kid's journey and not the parents' journey. It really was all about, hey, the kid's going to go through some ups and some downs and some trials and triumphs, and they're going to struggle at times, but it's all theirs, right? So that's the one thing I wanted to share. And to really drive that point home, I thought I would tell 2 stories. The first story is a personal story from myself. I was watching a game at the Granville Rec. My son was in 3rd or 4th grade, I believe, and he was playing point guard. And we were at the intermediate school, so a lot of you can picture this setting. And he's doing a nice little job. He was playing for a team coached by Mark Miller. Many of you know the Millers. And Mark did a great job. The team was very organized, and as you're sitting, you can picture most games at that level. You see a lot of people just shooting the ball, running up and down the court. Well, Mark did a really good job of having plays, and they were organized, and it was fun to watch. Well, my son was playing point guard, and his job was to come up and dribble the ball up, and he was to pass it to the wing. And from there, they started the action, and the play occurred, and sometimes they scored, and sometimes they didn't. And it worked well. Well, on this particular game, with probably like 2 or 3 minutes left in the half, the defense made an adjustment, and they started jumping that pass. And so by jumping the pass, all of a sudden this pass started getting deflected, it started going out of bounds, then they started stealing the ball, then they started stealing the ball and going to make layups. And I was sitting in the stands, and maybe you can relate to this, maybe you can, and I'm like shaking, going, come on, make an adjustment. And it just kept happening over and over. And I felt so bad for my son, I felt so bad for the team, I wanted to help. And so I'm sitting there and I'm reflecting and I'm going, okay, there's a minute till halftime. At halftime, what am I going to do? Am I going to go down there and give some suggestions, right? Because if I give those suggestions, it's going to come from a really good place. I'm going to do it to help my son. I'm going to do it to help the team. And maybe even Coach Miller will thank me for giving these awesome suggestions. Well, I reflected back to what I've seen as a college coach and seeing well-adjusted kids. And I thought, okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give myself a parent timeout. And I went and I took a walk. I took a walk on top of the stage at the intermediate school, walked around the cafeteria. And when I came back into the gym with about a minute left in halftime, something really cool was going on. Coach Miller was out there on the floor with my son and the rest of the team, and they were making an adjustment to that play. So at halftime, instead of now passing to the wing, the guy came up and set a screen. My son was going to dribble around and then start a new play. And it hit me. So maybe that sort of didn't sound very impactful for you, but it hit me how big that was. Because let's think about what could have happened. What if I would have grabbed my son, pulled him off to the side at halftime, right? All with good intentions, by the way, and said, hey, here's what you're going to do. Don't listen to coach. Don't do this. Just dribble around. Now you think about what that does to the kid. Now they got to make a decision. Do I listen to my dad? Or do I listen to my parents? Or do I listen to my coach? And think about what a tough spot that puts them in. Also, right, if I would have intervened, maybe I could have stopped that failure. Maybe I could have helped. Maybe for a little while he wouldn't have thrown so many passes away. But he got to learn something through that failure in that moment as well. And then he also got to learn what it's like to listen to authority, to listen to a coach, and make adjustments. So I share that just one example of releasing the experience. And now as I sit here and tell that story 3 years later, I can do it in a real relaxed state. But that day, I remember feeling that anxiety. And really that anxiety was my ego talking, right? So that was the first story. The second story was my observation of a collegiate parent. And I'll share the story. I was an assistant coach at the time at Marietta College, and we were playing a road game in Memphis, Tennessee. And so we had a chartered bus, but there was a 4-team tournament going on, and we were playing the second game of the tournament. And I had to go scout the game prior, but all we had was our chartered bus. So I needed to find a ride. The only person available to give a ride was a guy named Larry Gosser. His son, Brian Gosser, played for us. Now, anybody who's coached, taught, sometimes being trapped in a car with a parent is not what you want to. You don't want to have that captive audience for 15 or 20 minutes. And so I needed to get to the game. I accepted the car ride with Mr. Gosser. To give a little bit of background, Mr. Gosser's son, Brian, was our #1 pitcher the year prior. His freshman year, he was our best pitcher. This year, his sophomore year, he was like our #3 or #4, so he had been demoted. So we didn't even know if he was going to pitch that weekend. So even more anxiety for me as I sat in that car going, how's this going to go? Well, I was wrong. The car ride was unbelievable. We're sitting there, we're talking the whole way. I was a new father at the time, so this is 10 or 11 years ago. And he was asking me about Lowry, and he was asking me about my son Joey. We were just talking about all the things that go along with being a new dad. And so about 5 minutes out from our destination now, I'm relaxed, and I got to ask him a question. I said, Larry, I notice whenever Brian pitches that you're really calm. And I said, I've noticed other dads and other parents, some of the nicest, coolest people we ever see. They're pacing, they're roaming, they're screaming at the umpire. I said, how do you do it? How can you stay so calm? And he said something to me that day that I've shared with every one of my friends who have kids because it was that impactful for me. He said, Coach, and Larry from Southeastern Ohio had a big draw. I said, Coach, he said, I learned a long time ago that Brian's a good boy before the game, and Brian's a good boy after the game. So while he's pitching, I figure he's probably a good boy too, and I'm just going to sit here and enjoy and support him. Not earth-shattering stuff, but it was enough that it stopped me in my tracks, and I thought, my goodness, I want to be that kind of influence on my kids someday in our community, right? Because we all tend to really value sports, and I would say sports are it's so special. You can learn so many life lessons. But there are times when pillars of the community, lawyers, doctors, teachers, coaches, you see some of the best people lose their mind during your youth sporting events. And Larry gave me that confidence and I looked at his son, by the way. His son went on to be National Pitcher of the Year twice and 2-time national champion as well. And I saw such a well-adjusted adult, and I thought it had to be something from Larry, right? That calm influence, that his identity wasn't wrapped up in being a baseball player. Larry's wasn't living vicariously through his son. He had released that experience. He understood that it was Brian's experience. And even though Brian had been demoted, Brian was still a good boy. And guess what? When the time comes around, he was going to get a shot, and he was going to do well. So I hope those two stories make some sense to you. I just really value sports. I really value our community. And I know as a parent how tough it can be and how challenging it can be to be a parent sometimes in those environments. But if I can give you any advice, just to sum it up, is to do your best. And I'm living right with you, by the way. I go through the moments of anxiety. I go through those moments where I want to intervene. But as much as you can to release that experience and realize that it's the kid's journey and not yours, I think the better off we're all going to be. So thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you at the ball fields, soccer fields, swimmings, wherever else that we see you. So thank you.
Coach, thank you. Those are really impactful words. I think not only for our community, but my wife and I, share the same feeling. So thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. I